Welcome to Story Hour, a virtual meetup hosted by Wolf and Heron.
So I loved sleepaway summer camp when I was little. It's really like the only time that children get to be adults without actually being adults. You know, they roam this like free through this expansive campus of games and basketball courts and cabins, like full of counselors who are really just glorified babysitters or glorified teenagers who are living in their own romantic novel of a summer. I went to sleepaway camp in Woodstock, Connecticut, and our camp was a magical camp, as any camper would say. It set pretty on a very unpretty, filthy lake, which we paid absolutely no mind to while we were swimming our hearts out. And actually, I remember the swim test very vividly. Every year I would get this like very hot sensation in my chest of just sheer panic. Not totally dissimilar to the panic I feel now as like an adult when I'm trying to like cook things simultaneously. My biggest fear was always that I wouldn't pass the advanced swimmer test. Like I would get to there and just like forget how to swim or something. And that would mean I wouldn't be able to like swim out with all the older kids to the dock that was in the middle of the lake, which was definitely not in the middle of the lake. But when I was 12, it sure was. I always passed, which is good. And camp always came with camp friends, you know, like I remember one particular year, my camp friend was Sam. And Sam was like your ride or die type camp friend. She would sit there and watch your 2-hour game of spit just to support you while you're playing the evil cabin mate, Sarah. And then later, when Sarah dared you to make out with a girl during a midnight game of Truth or Dare in front of all of your cabin mates, who came through? Sam. She was that type of friend. So when I started singing in front of Sam, Sam was obviously very supportive. And, you know, I was 12 at the time, like if I back up for a sec, and I was in a phase of like self-discovery. And I was like pretty sure I was born to sing. And I actually still to this day don't know if that was just like me. I was actually pretty good. And maybe if I had invested in some singing lessons and, you know, some lifelong dedication, I would have possibly made it big. Or if it was just sort of that average 12-year-old delusion at play. Nevertheless, Sam was like, Molly, you're like really good. You should totally do the talent show. Of course, the talent show at camp is like a very big deal. Everyone cool at camp did the talent show, but I was terrified because I had unbelievable stage fright, debilitating stage fright. Like the mere thought of getting up on stage in front of all of my counselor boyfriends and all of the older girls who I obsessively stalked on campus made me sweat just thinking about it. But Sam was persistent. She was like, I will sing with you if you go up. We can do it together. And I was like, okay. If we're going to do it together, like if you're going to come up with me, that's chill. I just can't go alone. A few days later, Sam nudged me to sing in front of our cabin counselor, Chris. And Chris was the coolest. She had this beautiful red hair and these beautiful freckles that like sprinkled all over her face. And I just wanted Chris's approval and admiration, which was not totally unusual for me at that age. Like my entire adolescence was lived in a state of desire to be older, or at the very least, to be treated like I was older by older people. So when I sang in front of Chris and Chris placed her older person hands on my shoulder and was like, Molly, that was amazing. Everything changed. I was a changed woman. Like suddenly the talent show was this great idea and I was on my way to stardom. Like I got so hyped off that one line of affirmation that it actually felt like my feet lifted off the ground for a second. Like talk about an inflated ego. I was up there in the sky. And all of a sudden, I mean, truly in like the matter of 30 seconds, I was like not so sure I was keen on sharing the stage with Sam anymore. I was not sure I wanted to share the limelight in my moment of 12-year-old glory. But I was also not magically cured overnight by my very real stage fright. So I had an idea. Days before the talent show, Sam and I were walking to the cafeteria hand in hand, and I looked over at her very seriously and I was like, Sam. She was like, what? It's like, I think you should just sing the end of the song with me. And she was like, okay. I was like the end. She was like, okay. I was like, the last word. Really? And she's like, okay. Like this was Sam. She was just here for it. And I was a brat, obviously. So the day comes, the talent show comes, and Sam comes up to the stage with me. And I am ready with my lyrics to Miss Independent by Kelly Clarkson. And I am shaking in my boots because ego does not cure stage fright. And I am so scared and I am just visibly shook. But Sam is firm in her stance, awkward as all hell because she's not the one singing. She's just standing next to me, standing there waiting for her cue. She's the backbone to our little duet, which is not a duet. And I am in pain. I am excruciatingly waiting for this last moment, this last word. And finally, we come together in perfect unison. And Sam and I sing together. Ooh. The end.
Hey, thank you, Molly. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay, what did you appreciate about Molly's story? What should she hold on to for next time? John.
Your pacing is really good. It's noticeable. And you have, that's one thing you do exceptionally well. And it was also a really relatable, just like you could break that down minute by minute, and it was very relatable throughout.
You brought a lot of energy to the story. You were excited, and you kept our attention with that. And I love some of the lines you have. Ego does not cure stage fright. I've never heard that before. I wrote it down. I may use it. I may steal it from you.
Please.
It's a great line. It's a great line. But yeah, so it was very captivating, and I've considered learning how to sing myself, and I've been scared to do it. Maybe I'll get inspired now.
Nice.
Thanks.
Thank you, Robert.
Sure.
What else? Sarah.
Going to our 5 Ps punch, definitely, like, your verbal intonation is so good. There were just moments that your voice, sometimes even more than your words, like, really drove home those points. And I think the story overall was excellent. My favorite point was when you, like, this is a moment that only happens in Zoom, which, welcome to 2020. But it was so fantastic when you reached out and literally put your hands on our shoulders. Like, that was awesome.
Thank you.
Stephanie, last comment.
Well, Molly, I wrote 3 things down in terms of taking notes, and then I forgot to take notes for the rest of the time. So that's an indication that I was captivated. So that's pretty cool. I thought you did a great job in the description of, the experience of getting this affirmation from Chris, and what that felt like for you. It was extremely physiological. I could feel it, and simultaneously it came across in your vocal intonation and delivery as well. And so it was a moment where I was, like, very much feeling exactly what you were hoping that I would feel. At least that's what I imagine. And so I thought that was done well.
Thanks, Stephanie.
What might Molly experiment with next time? What might she try out a little differently? Stephanie.
I think I would play a little bit with your use of the you language versus I language. I think this is something that, like, it can be really powerful to speak in the second person. And there was enough of a flip-flop between first person and second person that I was a little bit just combobulated by it.
Yeah.
I think in particular, I was one of those kids that never went to summer camp, but was so jealous of all the kids from my school that did get to go. And so I remember, like, these stories of all the things that I was missing out on. And I guess maybe there was just, like, a part of me that was, like, back to being that kid again. When you're talking about, well, this is what your summer camp is like. It's like, I didn't get to go.
Really.
So that maybe I'm just triggered a little right there.
I feel that, though. And it's interesting you brought up the you, because I was like writing down notes last night about what I wanted to write about, and yeah, I was I was like, I'm not sure if this works, but just try it.
Yeah. It's always worth experimenting a couple different ways.
Totally.
John, did you have your hand up?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I should have said this. This isn't really a suggestion exactly, but the whole time I was like, okay, she's talking about singing. She's talking about singing. She's gonna sing it all. Like that's kind of weird and vulnerable on Zoom, especially. But she's gonna sing. And I was gonna suggest that you incorporate a little bit of actual singing, but you actually just nailed it. Like you fit. It was perfect the way you finished, where you just did this goofy one note ooh, and the way that you just like, there's no need for a denouement. Like that's the end of the story, and there's no need. It was the perfect way to end, and it was like in a way it was kind of a tease, but not in a bad way, you know. So I just wanted to. And I feel like you're always taught that there needs to be some kind of denouement, like some kind of reflective thing, and you didn't do it, you didn't need to do it, and you knew that you didn't need to do it. So good on you.
Thanks, John.
You know, John, I would actually second that. And I think one of the things that is particular about this theme, you know, this like being brave, that the story, when that's the theme, it is really kind of interesting to play with the idea that your story like ends at the moment of climax and that's it, because you've made your point.
Yeah.
Right? It is kind of a fun thing to play with.
Yeah. And it was the ending that I didn't prepare as well. Like I just didn't get to it when I was writing it last night. And I really wanted Sam to be the brave one. Like that's what I was trying to get across, you know, like Sam was the one who was awkwardly standing next to me, was not shaking in her boots. Like I just remember that so well, being like, dang, Sam's pretty brave. But yeah, it's tough. Like, I don't know if I know that, John. I think it's like, sometimes you just like strike a thing of luck, but it's like good to get some affirmation that works still, you know?
Neha?
That's interesting that you brought that up, Molly, because I was actually just thinking that it would be really interesting to know what Sam was thinking this whole time. And so actually and if that's the point, or if that's also what you wanted to come across, then I think, I don't quite know how you do it, but I think you could definitely use more of that, because I wanted to know, like, what is she thinking? Does she mind only singing one syllable? Like, how is she feeling about all this?
Hey.
And so I think that you could definitely play with that some more. I was also, I like how you told it. I mean, it was a lovely story. I like how you told it very informally. And so you didn't, it felt like really like you were talking, and something that might come up in like, you know, a tea time conversation with friends or whatever. I do think though that there maybe was a little bit of like filler words and a little bit more of that than maybe there needed to be. But I also know that you didn't, you said you didn't do as much prep. So maybe that's something that would naturally leave after a little bit more of that. But yeah, I think that was all I had.
Thank you.
I would actually add some color to Neha's comment, Molly, only because I know you personally and I have extemporaneous phone calls with you. And I find sometimes that in your storytelling, you actually lean on filler words more than you do when you're just talking normally.
Definitely.
And it's sort of an interesting thing to just kind of notice, where you're using the filler words to make it sound like you're being off the cuff. And yet in some ways that's like you take it almost too far, because you don't need to have that many filler words, because you don't use that many when you're talking normally.
Totally. Seriously. Yeah. I do that intentionally. So
yeah, right. I mean, I do too. I'll throw in, you knows and likes and stuff, because it does start to feel a little more informal. It starts to feel a little bit more, off the cuff.
Right.
And then you listen to
And
yourself
I would,
and you're like, man, I said that 400 times in 3 sentences.
and I would actually clarify, not so much filler words as filler phrases. I wish I had written them down. They're not like the standard like that what I picked up on. more like extra language and description that didn't feel necessary because it was so like it was very informal, and it is something that you would have said, but it didn't feel, it felt a little bit redundant when you said it, because you'd already said the same thing a sentence before. So that's actually more what I mean.
Totally.
Just to clarify that.
Totally.
One idea that I had, Molly, that's not maybe a unique suggestion for you, but for all of us, but the location of your story reminded me of how this could be helpful, is we often are relying on visual descriptions to set a scene, like cabin and the woods and the lake. And those are helpful. But when I was thinking of summer camp, and I have been to summer camp, it's also, there's smells and there's tastes and there's things that you touch and feel. And those are other sensory details that we, I think, forget about and just use less often. So not that you should overwhelm your story with them, but more every now and then stretch what type of details you add to stories and think about what might help make the scene vivid and feel real to people.
Totally. Yeah, that's a great point. So many smells that you can.
So many smells. Excellent. Well, thank you, Molly, for sharing your story, and thank you, everyone, for your feedback.
Everybody.
Visit wolfandheron.com to find out more about our story hours.